In the shadowy hollows of Ravenhurst, a forgotten village cradled by ancient forests and choked with ivy-covered ruins, there lived a dollmaker named Elias Vorell. Over a century ago, he was known for his life-size dolls, eerily realistic creations that enchanted the elite but unnerved the common folk. His magnum opus was a porcelain doll he named Liora, crafted in the image of his deceased daughter. Liora stood 3 feet tall. Her alabaster skin gleamed with a lifeless sheen. Her hair was curled into thick chestnut ringlets, tied with faded burgundy ribbons. She wore a Victorian tea gown, cream with wine-red lace, tight at the bodice, flared at the skirt. Her glass eyes were pale violet, almost translucent, giving the impression that they stared not at you, but through you. After Elias disappeared without a trace, his mansion was sealed. Locals believed he had transferred his soul, or worse, his daughter's, into Liora. For generations, no one dared enter the estate, until Hannah Coleridge, an art historian and restoration expert, received a mysterious invitation. Hannah was drawn to oddities, and when she received the unsigned letter offering her a hefty sum to assess a rare artistic relic of porcelain origin, she couldn't resist. It directed her to Ravenhurst, a place absent on modern maps, but found on aged ones in university archives. She arrived in mist, the air thick with rot and silence. The mansion loomed like a cathedral of decay, its spires broken, its gargoyles moss-eaten. Inside, time was arrested. Portraits stared with cracked, weary expressions. The air was heavy with lavender and mildew. And then she found the doll, sitting in a high-backed velvet chair, perfectly preserved. As Hannah examined Liora, she noticed details too precise. Real, human eyelashes, a subtle warmth to her limbs. That night, as she documented her findings by candlelight, she heard the faint patter of footsteps, too small to be adult. When she returned to the drawing room, the doll was gone from the chair. She found her in the hallway, seated beside a broken mirror. On the fogged glass was a childlike handprint. The next morning, her camera footage showed movement during the night. Liora climbing from the chair, twitching as if learning to walk again. Through Elias's journals, hidden beneath floorboards, she learned the truth. Elias had become obsessed with resurrecting his daughter. Liora had died at 8. Her spine snapped during a fall from the staircase. Elias had turned to blood rituals, encasing her soul in porcelain, using flesh glaze, a formula requiring human remains to give his dolls life. Each doll he made afterward disappeared from buyers' homes. It was Liora who consumed them, needing more flesh to maintain her vitality. Elias vanished when he tried to separate himself from her. He'd failed. She had learned to sustain herself. Now, with Hannah there, another woman, another body, Liora had plans. The days grew darker. Clocks stopped. Hannah's reflection began lagging in the mirror. She would wake up with bruises in the shape of doll-like hands. Her voice began to echo unnaturally. On the 5th night, she saw Elias's ghost in the mirror, mouthing, "Burn her, or become her." She tried. She poured gasoline. She lit the match. But Liora wept. "He left me alone," she sobbed in a voice both metallic and childish. "Don't leave me too." And for a moment, Hannah saw the little girl beneath the horror. She hesitated. That was her mistake. The fire consumed the estate. Rescuers found a woman's body, unrecognizable, charred. But what stood untouched in the ruins was a single porcelain doll, perfect, without a scratch. The collector who acquired her weeks later said the doll blinked, and somewhere in a city apartment, lit by moonlight, Liora stands once again, 3 feet tall, alabaster skin, violet eyes, curled chestnut hair in burgundy ribbons, dressed in her red lace tea gown, watching, waiting. Julian Marr was not a man of superstition. A wealthy antiquarian and collector of rare curios, he considered the supernatural nothing more than folklore draped over forgotten history. When he discovered the doll untouched in the ruins of the Ravenhurst mansion, he saw an opportunity, not a warning. He displayed Liora in a glass cabinet in his London penthouse, surrounded by ancient masks and mummified relics. She became the centerpiece of his private collection, her unblinking violet eyes catching the light with uncanny precision. Guests commented on her realism. Some refused to be alone in the room with her. One night, after a gallery gala, Julian returned home drunk and alone. He stood before the cabinet, glass of cognac in hand, and muttered, 100 years old and still prettier than most women I know. That night, he woke to the sound of cracking glass. Julian's cabinet was shattered, though nothing else in the room had been touched. The security footage showed static for exactly 7 minutes, and when it resumed, the doll was back in the case. But her head was tilted, different from before. Julian tried to shrug it off, but the next evening, his dog growled at the cabinet, then howled until it collapsed in seizures. The veterinarian found tiny porcelain shards embedded in the animal's neck, far too fine for the naked eye. Julian moved the doll to a locked vault, but at 3:33 a.m., she would appear elsewhere, on the piano bench, in the stairwell, once even seated at the dining table. And each time, her gown seemed less pristine, more organic, damp, stained. Obsessed and unraveling, Julian studied the doll's violet eyes under magnification. Inside each iris, he discovered microscopic patterns, symbols, etched in concentric spirals. When he photographed them, the images burned out his hard drive. Even analog prints warped and bled. He began to hear whispers in the walls, scratching in the vents. One night, he locked himself in his panic room. The lights flickered. In the corner of the room, the steel-plated one with no windows, Liora sat, dress soaked, mouth slightly open. He screamed. When the door was finally forced open by police, Julian was gone. Only a bloodied wine glass remained. Liora sat in the center of the floor, head tilted, hands folded. Liora was sold again, quietly, discreetly, passed among collectors like a cursed heirloom. Each owner vanished or died grotesquely. Some were found drowned in their bathtubs, filled with porcelain slurry. Others vanished, and in their place new dolls appeared in antique shops, mimicking their faces in disturbing detail. And now, Liora is somewhere else, waiting. They say if you find her, you'll dream of cracked tea sets and a burning mansion, of a child's voice whispering, "Will you be my new mummy?" The doll was eventually acquired by Ava Brandt, an archivist and folklorist specializing in ritual objects. She didn't buy Liora, she inherited her. The crate arrived without sender or invoice. A note inside, written on aged vellum in faded ink, read only, "She belongs to those who believe." Ava had studied cursed relics, shadow cults, and possession cases. She didn't believe them. But the moment she touched the doll, she felt it. A chill, deep and marrow cold, like her bones recognized something before her brain did. She brought the doll home, stored her in a glass case in her study, and began researching. What she found unsettled even her seasoned logic. Elias Vorell had not created Liora's curse alone. Ava uncovered hidden texts in a university archive referencing the Bloodwood Codex, a collection of grimoires from a now extinct sect called the Birchworn Choir. They practiced soul binding, using hollow vessels to trap dying spirits. They called it the inheritance of silence. In a marginal note, she found Liora's name, but more chillingly, drawings of her. Exactly as she appeared today, dated 1843. Yet Elias had created her in 1896. Something had worn the Liora form long before Elias sculpted it. Ava began dreaming of the doll's life. But in these dreams, she wasn't Ava. She was Liora. She saw herself running through woods at night, barefoot, blood on her gown, dragging a small spade. She saw a faceless figure, tall, cloaked in bark-like robes, waiting at a circle of stones. And the words, "Give her form. She will feed." Ava would wake up in cold sweat, mud on her hands, soil in her bedsheets. The doll was no longer in her case. Desperate, Ava tried to destroy Liora. Fire, acid, blunt force. Nothing worked. The more she tried, the stronger Liora's presence grew. Lights burst, mirrors cracked, whispers echoed from drawers and vents. One night, her voice recorder, left running, Captured Liora speaking. He built me. But I was already here. That night, Ava woke to find her own journals rewritten in her handwriting, detailing events that hadn't happened yet, including her own death. The last line read, "And now, I will carry her instead." The next morning, Ava was missing. Her apartment untouched. But one thing was new. A porcelain doll seated at her desk. Different face. Glass eyes with a ring of violet. Still the same curls. Still the burgundy ribbons. Still Liora. Only now, her dress had glasses in the front pocket. Ava's glasses. And a name tag stitched into the hem. Brant A.